Hi, I'm Allison. Together with Julia, we are the co-founders of Deep Talks. Deep Talks creates spaces for thought-provoking conversations on the topics that matter. And at this moment, COVID is the topic that matters most.
With Corona Talks, we aim to spark deep conversations and engage our audience into active discussion around key areas impacted by the crisis, with an ultimate goal to empower all of us to take active action. For this, every Corona Talk episode consists of two parts. First is a live expert panel discussion, a recording of which you are just about to watch, always followed by a small group discussion between our panelists and selected part of our audience of every episode.
So here is Corona Talks. We hope you feel inspired by this episode. Let us know what you think and join the conversation in the link below. Thank you. I'm Allison. I'm the co-founder of Deep Talks. Deep Talks, we create spaces for thought-provoking conversations on topics that matter. And so for so many of us at the moment, COVID is the topic that matters most. With Corona Talks, we're working to spark deep conversations around areas impacted by the crisis. We believe that it's our everyday choices, both large and small, that contribute to the global response. And we are co-shaping the world we live in, so it's our time to join the conversation. So to get started, we are sharing a quick and anonymous one-question poll. You should see it pop up below. So how are you feeling? Like, how is your anxiety? Just give us a second to tell us how you're feeling. It should be popping up below. Cool. So in the meantime, here's a quick agenda for the evening. We will start with a 45-minute conversation with our panelists. We will have 5 minutes for questions at the end, so please pop them into the chat if anything comes up. We will finish at about 7. And then our lucky lottery winners will use the link that we sent to you by email to join a Deep Talks discussion round with our experts. In the discussion round, that is our guided conversation format where we will dive deeper into the topic with our panelists. But rather than a private Q&A, this is a chance for all of us to open up, to hear different perspectives, learn from each other. And this session will go from 7 to 8 p.m. Berlin time. So anyway, we're so thrilled that so many of you were interested in participating in our Deep Talks discussion round. Panels are new to us, but this is what we do best. So we encourage you to enter again next week or join one of our Deep Talks salons on another topic. But we have a busy agenda, so let's get started. Let's see, the first of our panelists is Julia Dahm. She is a coach and counselor focused on promoting personal growth and fulfillment. She holds a master's in psychology and has 7 years of work experience in a management consultancy. Through coaching, blogging, workshops, and seeking engagements, her goal is to bring scientific psychological research to a broader audience by translating into ideas that we all can understand and implement to live a better life. Then we have Veronique Vermeulen, who is the founder of Salatha. Salatha is a beautiful meditation app paired with a jewelry line that reflects your power. She founded Salatha after realizing that happiness comes from within. And when she set her heart on creating a meditation app, she knew that the challenge would be to keep mindfulness as a part of everyone's everyday life. So the app works alongside a beautiful crystal necklace or a bracelet. And then finally, we have Ben, who is the Director of Business Development and the Head of Coaching at iDiscover 360, an avant-garde educational institute that enables individuals, teams, and organizations to make the most of their personal and professional potential. Ben works with executives, entrepreneurs, artists, and consultants on performance, prosperity, and purpose. So yes, it's an impressive bunch. And thank you all for joining us tonight to talk about this crucial topic. So to kick off the conversation, we have all been experiencing coronavirus, the situation. So we all know what this is like. And let me see, I'm just pulling up the poll. So it actually looks like half of you are not having that much anxiety, which is great. But unfortunately, half of us are. And so I wanted to start the conversation by asking Julia, why does this current situation pose such a threat to our mental health?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction, Allison. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. And yeah, that's interesting. Like 50% of you guys also said that this is impacting your mental health. So why does this threaten our mental health? I think, well, first of all, it's just scary, right? Something's going on and we don't see it, we don't know much about it, and there's so much conflicting information out there, like use masks, don't use masks, and stay away from each other for 2 meters. No, it has to be 20 meters if you're on a bike, and no one really knows what's going on. So that's just very, yeah, scary. We also worry about our actual physical health and probably the health of loved ones, families, grandparents, and all that kind of things. So the virus itself can leave us feeling helpless, anxious, and scared. And on top of that, we have this secondary effect of being quarantined. Here, I feel it's important to just briefly talk about an important distinction. At least in Germany, we have several groups in our population who face very different challenges. So there's people who now work from home, like I do, and face challenges such as, I don't have a lot of space in my apartment, or childcare is an issue. But there's also people who have lost their businesses, who run cafes, restaurants that needed to be closed. And we have people that, as we in Germany put it, are relevant to the system. So they have to go to work, like nurses, doctors, but also transport-related occupations. And these people, again, face very different challenges as opposed to someone like me who just needs to figure out how to work from home. So when we now discuss the dangers to our mental health, I would like to focus especially on the dangers or the challenges it poses to be socially isolated, to be working from home, and to having your routine disrupted like we all experience. And also the fear of the virus itself. So why is this a mental health risk? Because of, obviously, as Allison also mentioned in the introduction, and as you guys also said in the polls, it triggers anxiety, like the pandemic itself, and also the quarantine kills our routines, and it deprives us of a basic human need, the need for connection. We basically face an epidemic of loneliness. And looking at anxiety from a psychological point of view, let's say that the chance that we will go through that whole process of becoming infected, displaying symptoms, then falling ill and really developing a serious condition is maybe 1%, I don't know. But from an anxiety perspective, when our anxiety kicks in, it's 100%. And in a rush of anxiety, what we see, what our brain does, is just see the worst case scenario. So that's been happening to most of us a lot, I guess. And the second thing that I wanted to highlight is the lack of routines. Why is that an issue? Because routines provide a feeling of security. I get up, I go to work, same thing every day, I know what I'm doing, and that stability makes us feel safe. And now this disruption that we're facing takes away our established routines. And more than that, it also robs us of distractions that we usually face. So that means that for some of us, issues or topics can come up now that otherwise never get the space to show themselves. So with some of my coaching clients that I work with, what I've seen is that they start thinking about completely new and different questions during these times. So what should I do with my life? What is my purpose here? Also, for some people, childhood trauma may creep up when there's too much time for rumination and not enough distraction. So for some people, this can feel like Pandora's box has been opened, which is really scary on top of all the physical health worries that we might face. And maybe the most obvious challenge we face is isolation, lack of human connection that we experience. We might have to change the way we interact as human beings in our society, possibly for quite a long time, and we don't even know when this is going to end. But we are social animals. And so we have to be aware that it also makes sense from an evolutionary perspective that we feel bad when we are as socially isolated as we are now. This is not something that we were built to live with. So it's totally normal to feel this way. This is not how we are wired. So Allison, maybe let's switch to something more hopeful and positive. Shall we talk about what we can do about it?
Yes, please. I would love to hear what everyone has to say on how we can cope when we feel a rush of anxiety.
Okay. I'd like to start by sharing one thought that is, I think, a big part of protecting our mental health during this crisis is about acceptance and about having compassion with ourselves. Feeling the way we do is okay. And I can't stress that enough. It's absolutely natural to feel very scared, anxious, whatever you may fear, lonely during this time. We all do. Also, I would like to take this opportunity to highlight that if you experience a level of discomfort or depression or anxiety right now that you feel you cannot handle anymore, please do reach out for help. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It is so important right now. In terms of what we can actually do when we feel anxiety is overwhelming, here's a couple of thoughts that I would love to discuss with the panel. So one thing is take a break from the news. So scheduling time to check the news once or twice a day is probably just fine. And that feeling that we need to be updated every second about every development, everything could change by the minute. This feeling is harmful. So scheduling that time can be a strategy to kind of reduce that feeling of being overwhelmed by everything. Also, let's remember that physical isolation does not mean social isolation. That's kind of a misleading term. We can reach out to people and we can look out for each other. So reaching out to family, friends, colleagues is even more important during these times. And an idea that I really like is also to think about scheduling time with other people. So for example, colleagues at work, checking in and having time to talk about anxieties and worries that are related to the crisis is equally important as kind of having a coffee break where anyone who says Corona needs to put $1 in the jar or something just to get your mind off it and talk about something else. Also, I guess we all know by now that we should all establish healthy routines, getting up in the morning and dressing and getting our exercise and all, and not taking work calls with no pants on. But that's not always easy and we might fail. And how we deal with that failure to stick to our plans that we made, I feel that is sometimes even more important than the initial plan. So do we beat ourselves up over it? Or can we react with self-compassion and kindness towards ourselves? So I feel like during this time, being kind to ourselves is one of the biggest favors we can do us. And that's a great way to support your mental health this way. Because again, a lot of the pain that we experience right now comes not from external factors that we see, but from the way we react to them, from the pressure that we put on ourselves and also on others. So there's a lot of stuff going around on the internet right now. I'm sure you've seen it. If you don't come out of this with a beach body and you learn to speak Chinese and know 10 new yoga poses or started a business, this kind of messaging is harmful. So let's try to not put that pressure on us and also not on other people. Like if you're someone who enjoys exercising, of course, go ahead and do it. But if you're someone who's just doing their best right now and getting through the day, getting up in the morning, you're doing fine. If you got up and made coffee and sat on the couch all day, that's totally okay too. So everybody needs to go at their own pace. We differ in our resilience that we bring. So let's not judge other people for how they cope, and let's be kind to ourselves in the way we deal with it.
Yeah. Thank you, Julia. So then, What do you think from like a personal development perspective? What is the right balance of kind of, seizing this opportunity and at the same time being kind to yourself and not expecting yourself to, learn how to run a marathon or something?
Mm. I mean, we have the opportunity because many of us have more time at their hands right now than they usually do. So do whatever feels good to you right now. If you feel you have the energy to start something new, to practice, to, I don't know, learn an instrument, then go ahead and do it. Obviously, that's much more healthy from a psychological point of view than lying in bed all day and crying. But what I'm saying is, if you feel like you need that right now, that's okay too.
Yeah. Ben, what do you think?
There's a podcast that I had seen with Tim Ferriss and Brené Brown discussing, and they ended up talking about self-acceptance, which Julia, you kind of touched upon. And it was really interesting because there's kind of a nuance to it. Usually we think either you kind of accept everything and then you're going to end up being very like complacent and lazy and do nothing because you don't have any power, or you go into the approach of, you can control things, you can change things, and then it kind of goes in the face of accepting what is. And what they were talking about is, I think the view that obviously I share what they came to, they articulated probably better than I could, but there's two sides at the same time. There's both the accepting what isn't in your control, like what's going on, what's going on in the news, what's going on with the virus. All of these things are just not things that we have any agency towards. And so fighting against that in our mind is kind of futile and a waste of our energy and time. And at the same time, I think we need to identify what we do have agency over. Like it could be just at our scale, and it could be with our neighbors, and it could be just in our flats, and whatever it is that right now we do have agency over in terms of space and in terms of time. But in that context, then we get to like grow and do some work, right? We can want to change things, develop things, learn a skill, whatever people want to do, as Julia pointed out. But I think it's both. It's not either or. It's both and. Being accepting of like how you feel. If one day you wake up and you feel really like low and you have cabin fever, and okay, that might show up. But then at the same time, that doesn't mean that there's nothing in your world that you can do something about. That would be just like a sweeping statement that would also be quite generalistic and not true. So it's distinct. It's accepting how you feel, and then also at the same time practicing. Okay, so I know I'm feeling this way right now. What can I do that is in my control? Maybe I can like look after this plant, or maybe I can call a friend. It sounds stupid, but when we're in that space, it's very hard to think. So I think because emotions run high, and so our capacity to reason is kind of like impaired, and so focusing on little things that we can change is a way to sort of like ride the wave of discomfort that is present. But it's not denying it; it's just being with it.
Veronique, obviously this is like such a great time to start a meditation practice. I've seen so many people, either new meditators or like I myself have joined a group where we're meeting every day. Like, what do you think about now starting a meditation practice, or like why this is such a good time?
Yeah, so absolutely, I would recommend everyone who doesn't have a regular meditation practice yet to get started now. I also want to point out one more thing on the acceptance, because for me, it's also once a year I go to a monastery and I live with the nuns. And this is always a challenging thing for me, because like going to a monastery, you have none of the luxury you normally have in your home, and you give up on all of that while you use actually your scarce holiday days. And the first days I always struggle with myself, because I think, what am I doing here? Why I'm cleaning the floors and the toilets where I could be at the pool or at the seaside or something. And it takes me a few days to get into that flow. And the moment I accept life for what it is, everything starts to flow, and it's beautiful, and it's the most amazing time I can have. And so even while I'm cleaning the floor, which I think not many of us really love to do, I do it with all my heart, and I start to really just embrace what's there. And I think this can also really help the moment we accept the situation as it is. Not, as Julie also said, don't watch the news all the time, just be in the moment, just be in the now. And that is also done to link to meditation. Meditation helps you with being in the now, to not create all those scenarios in your head about what can happen and all those fears that can create the most horrible stories. So it really support you with that. But also I think many know that meditation releases stress. Stress normally starts with some shallow breathing. It tightens your muscles. But in the long term, it really weakens your immune system. It accelerates aging, and it shrinks your brain tissue. So meditation releases GABA, which is a neutralizing chemical that's scientifically proven to minimize stress. And already like 60 minutes of accumulative time of meditating, increasing your levels of GABA with 27%, which makes you feel more calm, less anxious. Also, meditation releases endorphins, and that gives a natural high that elevates your feelings of happiness. Meditation allows you to step back from your emotions, from the situation, and especially now, whether you are really alone at home or you have a husband who is reacting in a way that you're like, oh my God, why does he do that? Take a moment for yourself to close your eyes and observe the situation from a different perspective, and you most likely see like what is actually happening there when you let go of all the rushing emotions through your system. Meditation also helps better sleep. So it increases your melatonin levels, and that is key for deep slumber. So when you have a good sleep, the rest of your day will also be better. So I think for everyone right now, even though you have your family at home and you try to do your work, try to find a few minutes of that time for yourself to have this meditation habit in your life. And there's many meditation apps out there. Of course, I would recommend Salata to try it out. There's some free meditations on the website as well, especially designed for this time when you are more stressed, maybe when you have an issue with trust, when you feel scared. To really connect to yourself and releases the stress. And if you build that habit right now, you can continue it in the future and really benefit from it.
For getting started, how many minutes a day, or is there any sort of advice you would have, like, to really feel the benefits, or just like anything helps?
Anything helps. I always ideally you do like 15 minutes to 20 minutes of meditation. Now I know that's not feasible for everyone, especially if you have the whole family at home. You're already happy that you can get some work done. So try, maybe even if that's the case, to take 2 minutes in the bathroom before taking a shower, where you are on your own, and close your eyes and just follow your breathing. That's already helping a lot. And if you can, 20 minutes is really good to build up a regular practice and reap more benefits. So it's kind of like building a house. Everything helps. Everything is a little stone that you're building. And so the more you can do, the better. But any second. And I also maybe you're even in the supermarket and you stand in line, the long line these days. You can for a moment close your eyes and just focus on your breathing. So use those little moments as well.
Thank you so much. So before this panel, I had a few different friends suggest that I ask you all this, because it's a really challenging one. So of course, we all everyone in every situation is having different challenges with this crisis. I mean, especially if you have a difficult home situation or people who are homeschooling their children, like everything comes with their own its own challenge. But I particularly wanted to ask you about people who live alone. This is like obviously a really challenging time to be spending so much time working from home, only going outside for walks. Like, do you have any specific advice for people who are living alone and how they can kind of find connection or just like, you know, take care of themselves a bit better?
I think actually if you're living alone, there's also a big plus because you can take a moment. I think the whole crisis that we have also helps us to step back for a moment. And that's also what Julia was describing, that opens Pandora box. So it also gives us a lot of things that are there, but take now the opportunity to work on that. And as Julia said, it's really great to find help and find a coach who can support you with that. But honestly, like especially if you're in Germany or places where you can still go out, go for a walk with someone. Being by 2x2, you can go for like an hour walk, a few hour walks. You can go for a run, get some sunlight. It's beautiful weather. That's absolutely helping to give you some happy hormones as well. Call up people. So I'm now really checking on people just very shortly, like, hey, how are you doing? People that live in different countries, how is it there? Your parents, family, especially older people that should stay in and often do not have space, give them a call maybe every day, which gives you a good feeling also to support them. And maybe there's a lot of apps like Nebenan, where you can support your neighbors with groceries, people that can't go out of the house, or walk the dog or help other people, because if we can be a bit more kind in this time to each other, it can bond us. And I think we can support so many people in this time. So if you feel alone, go out and support others. Even in hospitals, there's a big ask for volunteers. So there's a lot of things that can be done.
Thank you. Would anyone like to jump in with any other advice for, living alone?
I'll just say something quick that might be a bit controversial, but I also think there's grass is always greener on the other side kind of behavior going on here. And it's, for some people at least, I know people who are alone, who are struggling, people who are alone, who are loving it, and people who are in a couple or with their family who are loving it, and others who find it like absolutely crazy and oppressing and constraining. So regardless of the circumstances, if you can get to a place where you're actually grateful with the benefits that are inherent to your situation, I think you can make the most of it. As Veronique was saying, one of the big pluses is, okay, well, maybe you have all the time you want to meditate because you don't have a baby running around that you need to look after. So I'm not canceling the fact that, yes, it will be challenging, and yes, you might want to see another human being like in the flesh and hug them. And if you're isolating the two of you, then that you don't have access to, fair enough. But it's also, there's also people who wish to be alone and they don't have that. So it proves that it's nothing to do really with, are you on your own or are you with someone else in your household? It's more, well, how do you choose to look at it? How do you, like Julia was talking about it too, but it's thousands of years old, right? It's our perspective on events rather than the events that really determine how we feel. So I would recommend try to find out, well, what's great about being on your own, because that won't happen for too long. And then once it's finished, it's finished. So you might as well, make the most of it now.
That's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. And I think that both of you, Veronique and Ben, just talked about gratitude as being like such an essential way to get us through this experience. I mean, do we have, like Julia, do you have any advice for kind of actionable techniques to like feel more grateful or to try to kind of switch our perspective on that?
Of course, I mean, gratitude is everywhere right now, and I'm really happy that it keeps like coming back as a concept that people look at, because yeah, it's the same thing that the monks had been doing 1,000 years ago, but for a reason, because it's great. So what can you do? For example, what works great is journaling. So when you wake up in the morning or when you go to bed at night, think of, I don't know, 3 to 5 things that you are grateful for, or that you were grateful for during that day. And what happens is you get used to this and it switches your focus. So that when you go through your day, you are more focused on what's actually good, because you train your mind to look out for those things. And when you do that for a while, so people say it takes 21 days to form a habit. I don't know if it's that long. You will feel the benefits after, I would say, 2 or 3 or 4 days. Just practicing that every night is a great way to feel that gratitude that Ben and Veronique talked about.
Yeah, I think another way, I love the 3 to 5 things to start the day, because you start your day good with positive vibe. Another thing to add to that is to end the day with the most beautiful moment of the day, because you start scanning what happened during the day and you focus on what was the most beautiful things, and you're like, oh, that was actually nice. Oh, that was nice as well. And so you also have like a nice night's sleep with a good feeling.
Yeah, I love that idea. I mean, I think something that I have personally experienced in this time is that I love the gratitude journal, but when my life has gotten so much smaller, it feels like a lot of these same things repeat, which is fine, but it kind of has less like power than it used to. So yeah, I love that as like a way to kind of think about what you're grateful for a little bit differently, because of course you're grateful for like those beautiful moments.
Yeah, and maybe start like, I never like comparing, but in this, like for me, I feel so grateful in these times that I can go out for a run. There's not so much corona here in the city as far as we know. There's so many positives. The sun is shining. And just try to really look at how lucky you are in the situation, to maybe spend more time with your kids than you normally could, and really treasure those moments. So yeah, try to broaden it up with all the little things that are actually there.
One more thing on gratitude that I wanted to share, and that's because it's been my experience that I take so many things for granted. It's ridiculous. And actually, there's a very powerful, I would say, practice, even though it's not really a practice, but it's just thanking and acknowledging people, even when it's just on a phone call. You know, just like, oh, thanks for calling me. Like, I really enjoyed that. Or thanks for making the time to pick up the phone. Even if it's a friend that you know very well, it takes a bit of like vulnerability and a bit of, you know, extra effort, but we practice it here all the time. Like I say to my wife, thank you for this and thank you for that. She says, thank you for making the bed. Like, it's stupid stuff, but actually then you get to start living into it, and it's not that stupid. It's just we take things for granted. So it's like, well, you do this and I do that, so we don't need to thank each other all the time for it. Like, well, no, you can still like be it. And it's like, you know, if you want to receive more love, give more love. If you want to receive more money, help other people make more money. Like, it's always this law of give and receive. And it's the same here. I feel if you want to feel grateful, it's almost like, well, give thanks, right? Be grateful to other people, not just to the sun and your health and all that, but like other humans. I find it very powerful because I feel a bit edgy about it, and it feels a bit difficult to do, and it feels a bit awkward to maybe say thank you so much for, you know, a random like conversation, but it's quite useful for me. So
Thank you. That is such a nice and easy technique that we can all take on. I appreciate that. Was like picking up the phone and FaceTiming and all these things we can do. Like, have you found that, I mean, of course, like now we're spending so much more time on our screens than we used to. do you have any thoughts on kind of like the balance of screen time when it comes to like quality screen time versus like mindless scrolling? Like that's something that I found myself falling into. And I think it's like really, you know, can be kind of soul crushing. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure.
Don't do the mindless scrolling. That's all I would do.
It's so tempting though.
Just don't do it. That's it.
Yeah, whatever you do, do it mindfully would be the answer I would give to that. So I believe it's totally fine if you want to scroll for a while. We all do it. That's fine, but be aware of what you're doing. And I think everyone needs to find their own way of doing these things these days. So there are people who can play video games all day long and they're happy with that. So why not? I wish I could do that. I get very agitated when I do like mindless screen time for too long, and I get the sense that, oh, you need to do something that is meaningful or useful in a way, but that puts me under stress. So I think it's great when you're able to enjoy screen time that is maybe not high quality screen time. So whatever works for you, really.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Just piggybacking on that just a little bit, on what you said, Julia, it's almost not being afraid of also telling people what works for you. I've caught myself several times say to someone, hey, let's actually have a call, because then I can just like walk around and I've done too much screen. And usually they completely get it and they're quite happy with it. So I think maybe we have a bit of this fear of like, oh, because I can't see anybody, maybe we should have a video call so that like but neither of us really want the video call, but we're kind of like allowing it to happen because we feel like we should. But actually, if you find that you prefer to be a bit off the screen, but you still want to speak to someone, just telling them so. So far, I've not seen that it's people take it the wrong way. On the contrary, they're often quite grateful for it because they want to connect, but they also do a lot of screen. And so having one of you take the lead and say, actually, you know what, like, why don't you go for a walk? Let's say it's in a country where the person can go for a walk. Let's do it over a walk, and then we can both like just look at other things. And I think that can work for people, but you just need to dare say what works for you, as Julia pointed out.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Veronique.
No, yeah, and I think for the more, because personally, I'm so much behind the screen now, work related, that I'm super happy that I don't want to see a movie or anything. I just want to go to an old-fashioned book and read and have some time either outside or have like finally a bit of time to read a book. And I think all these old-fashioned things may come back with a family. Maybe you play board games again, and yeah, let's honor those old-fashioned games that we had.
Yes, I love the idea. And Ben, I also I appreciate your comment on just kind of like being honest about what you actually need at this time. I think that something that we've been discovering through deep talks and also just like through our dealings with our friends is that now if we come to the situation feeling vulnerable and kind of like asking someone, not just asking someone how they are, but telling someone that you are having a hard time, immediately they feel more comfortable. And we've just had so many beautiful conversations that start by just like actually being the one who is vulnerable. And that's like been a huge lesson that like we've learned, that I've personally learned during this time. Yeah. But Ben, I would love to ask you, I know we kind of talked about this, about like how to kind of seize this opportunity to like better ourselves. I mean, that's what you do for a living. I know everyone has different goals and different, different things they want to be working on, but do you have any great case studies of like people who you've seen doing something really inspiring, or just any advice for us?
Well, I mean, a lot has been shared already on this call about different things you can do. But maybe one thing about challenges, which I think we all know, but somehow we just need to be reminded again and again and again. We don't like challenges, but we so need them, like for our growth. And by challenge, I mean, okay, you might like taking on that you want to run a marathon because that's a challenge that you choose, but you don't like the challenges that are like imposed on you, right? And by challenge there, I mean something unexpected that is disrupting your plan about how life should be, which happens all the time, every day, pretty much. And so, but if we look back, if I look back to my life, and I'm sure if all of you look back to your life, every time you've had to face a challenge, whether it was a disease or a broken arm or a loved one who was in pain or like a tough job, whatever it was, there's always a lot of like growth in that. There's always benefits. You bond with somebody else. You learn something about yourself. You grow up instead of just growing old, right? You grow up as well in terms of like becoming more mature. And we know this after the fact. Like we look back and we're like, oh my God, like that was so the best time of my life when he dumped me or she dumped me, because now blah, blah, blah. And so the essence of a lot of what we do in our discovery, is making the most of trying to bring that wisdom that we all develop later on and trying to develop it closer to now, by just trying to see both sides of every situation, including the ones you don't control. So what do I mean by both sides? Every challenge, we're going to perceive them, probably very like biologically speaking, we're going to perceive the threat and then the negative side of it very quickly. It's going to cause discomfort and suffering and pain and whatever that we're present with in a split second. The fear and the anxiety, I'm referring to this whole side of the challenge that we can see the drawbacks and we can see what's going to be like unpleasant about it. And then what we forget to do is to kind of like be centered and also practice looking at the other side and being like, okay, that sucks, fair enough, like that's not fun, but what is the value in this? Because I know in 2 years' time I look back and I will say, well, the silver lining was X and Y. So why do I need to wait for 2 years, spending 2 years in a kind of like victim mode, instead of thinking now, okay, these are this is like the yin part and this is the yang part. And at least I can like stand with my eyes wide open in the middle. So I'm just going to share stupid examples here, very simplistic, but the last month being locked down, being at home, financially, I saved money. It's like, it's a fact. I'm not talking about preference. I'm not saying, oh, but I would have preferred to travel to Turkey and do our program there and that would have been fun. Okay, yes. But fact is, do I have more money in my bank account now or not? And the fact is, yes, because I go out less and I don't spend money on takeaway in London and all that stuff. So, okay, small benefit, not huge, but like something. We had our first family call all together. We were like 9 people. We've never had a virtual call, 9 people together. And we live in different countries. So it's not like you could tell me, oh yeah, but you could have met in person. Like, no, we would not have met, all 9 of us, this past week. And we did for the first time in our life. So, okay, so that's nice. And then you just like keep the list going of like, how else is this useful? How else is this benefiting? And there comes a point where you just start to be like, okay, well, I'll just, do what I can do and completely be at peace, almost trust the rest. Trust that whatever is going on that I can't control, it's going to have, both sides, and it's not in my power to decide. But at least it helps a lot with like sanity and staying grounded to practice this. And so just to tie it in with what both Veronique and Julia said before about the gratitude every day, I would recommend people to pick one thing that pissed them off that day, or that they found really difficult, or that was not fun, whether it's your mom or whether it's just you felt shit, or I don't know. And ask yourself, okay, how me facing that, how me having that challenge, even if it's ongoing, how me having an argument with my wife, how is that helping me? Like, it's kind of a weird question to ask, but just find one thing one reason why this thing you can be grateful for it. And if you really practice this, in a few weeks' time, your mental resilience becomes so much stronger. The problem is the downside, because there's always a downside. The downside of this practice is that you have to take the responsibility. You can't like blame stuff and gossip about people and be like a poor victim, you know, to whom everything's happening, and you can't anymore, because whatever happens, you can empower yourself to see it in a way that is empowering to you. And so, but that takes work, and it takes a bit of an internal battle with your mind to do that yourself, or you can use a friend, and you can both like help yourselves to see it that way. But that's what we do, and that's what we find to work very well for people.
That's such a great recommendation. Thank you. On that note, I would love to ask, because we're already running out of time, if Julie and Veronique, if you could also share kind of like one actionable technique that we could take into the week. Before we do so, I just want to mention that we have 3 people who were signed up for our deep talk session with the panelists, and now they had to drop out. So we have 3 spots open. If anyone wants to just put their email in the chat, we would love to invite you to join the Deep Talks conversation after. This is starting at 7 Berlin time, so just pop your email in if you'd like to join us. But yeah, so Veronique, if you'd like to start, yeah, like what's something actionable that could help us with our mental health like this week?
Yeah, I really want to build on what Benjamin was saying. Like, don't put yourself into the victim role. Really take like your own responsibility. And I love this thing that, for me, he's such a big example. It's Viktor Frankl. So for whoever doesn't know him, he survived the camps as one of the 28% of survivors from the concentration camps, and he lost everything. Like everything. Like, we are really like in the most lucky place compared to what he lost: his family, his freedom, his positions, everything. And he always says that between stimulus and response, there's a space, and in that space lies your freedom. And there lies your freedom and power, how to respond. So with everything that's happening in this time, whether that's in your household, on the street, or where you face people and maybe they respond in a way that pushes your buttons, take a step back and decide how to respond to that, because your response is going to make such an impact on how this world is going to live in the coming weeks or months. So think about that in everything you do.
That was beautiful. Yeah. I like how we all circle back to that idea of putting something in between external stimulus. What does the world kind of do to you, and how do you react to it? And I strongly believe that meditation is the best tool to learn how to put that space in between. So after some practice, you're then able to kind of circle back to that whenever something in your everyday life happens that triggers your anxiety. Then you can kind of activate that feeling of relaxation, which is really nice. But I would like to share one more thing, because I just think it's so important that we take care of our mental health in that way. And that relates to the voice in our head. So everyone knows shower thoughts, or everyone knows that whenever we just want to sit back and relax and maybe try to meditate, there's this voice going on and it just keeps talking. It never shuts up. And I don't think we need to make it shut up, but we can train to talk, to make that voice talk to us like it would to a friend. Because oftentimes this inner critic, yeah, that's what we like to call this voice, is really like being a terrible advisor and just really mean and cruel. So kind of being aware of the way you talk to yourself, in the sense of kind of being able to say, stop, this is not serving me right now. What am I saying? What am I telling myself? And then retraining that voice to talk to you like you would talk to a friend. So for example, would you say to your best friend, like, you are a lazy ass person, you didn't get anything done today, you're worthless? You probably wouldn't. But we often do that to ourselves. So training yourself to be aware of that and stopping it, I think that is a very quick and easy way that you can work on probably your whole life, but you can improve really quick. That is something that I would recommend everyone to try.
Thank you so much, Julia. On that note, I think that's a great place to wrap up. This flew by. Thank you so much to our wonderful panelists for being here. This was super insightful. I personally learned a lot. And to our guests, I hope this was useful to you. We hope you learned some new ways to take care of yourself during these challenging times. If so, we have a final little poll to wrap up. If you'd like to tell us if you did learn anything, that would be super helpful. Cool. So next week, we will offer episode number 2, which is about if the crisis response justifies the costs. So we will be in touch when tickets go live. It's another free event. We also run our Deep Talk Salon events, which I mentioned. So that is where we have our guided conversations on a theme. Each one has its own theme, and we break into small groups and discuss. So if you're seeking a place to connect during these times, we'd love to see you there. Here's a link to our website in the chat where you can book. So now, as I mentioned, our lottery winners will leave this webinar and will join the Deep Talk session with a panelist. So just take a quick break, stretch, and come back, and we'll see you in about 2 minutes. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to our panelists, and
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you, everyone.